I want to go to Gianno Caldwell, who hears all the news about the statistics and all this. So this isn't about business and what the impact it has on the community. This is personal. He lost his brother Christian just in an errant shooting that had nothing to do with Christian. So he knows of what he speaks. Gianno, you had to see this and sit in private time. This is out of control. It's just out of control.
It is completely out of control, and my family and my brother Christian being murdered has paid the price. I'm going to tell you, Neil, soft on crime policies and the sentiments that have emboldened criminals have spread like a plague. When I look at the numbers from 2021 in Chicago as an example, Chicago homicides were nearly 3 times as much as California, which we know is a very, Los Angeles rather, is a very large city, and more than 5 times larger than New York City. I mean, wow. 90% of these homicides were gun-related. And then when you think about the fact that out of all the crime committed last year, only 12% of those crimes in Chicago led to an arrest, I mean, you want to just throw your hands up and just drop your head, because this is insanity on steroids. There's no other way to describe it other than soft on crime policies have endangered the lives of us all. Where does this end? I don't know. I can't tell you, Neil. Until people really get tired of these progressive policies, and this is, in my view, not about Democrats or Republicans, not even really progressives, but policies that have endangered people's lives. Until those policies are gone, we're in this situation continuously and reporting on this on a weekly basis.
And, you know, Gianno, to your point, I was talking to a law enforcement official retired just a couple of months ago, who said, you know, not too many years ago, we didn't have these lenient release programs that would allow a guy like this who had a record and, you know, did what he did to be released. But now it's gotten to be so lenient that you almost still have to have an active gun in the middle of an active shooting to not be released. What's happening here?
Well, Neil, even in that example you just provided, the Cook County prosecutor, Kim Fox, dropped 25,000 felony cases, including rape and murder. So maybe in the example that you use, even that wouldn't qualify. This is how dangerous these elected officials have become to the sanctity of life in this country. Whether you be talking about New York City, whether you talk about Los Angeles, whether you talk about Chicago or anywhere else, these folks are literally endangering the lives of their citizens. And I know people don't like to talk about it, but we know who's funding these candidates, who have handpicked these candidates. George Soros and these folks that became elected officials, and they continue to push the George Soros policies, which he said in the Wall Street Journal he doesn't see a problem with, and he doesn't see it creating more crime for the citizens in these different places.
I think he was quoted saying these are exceptional, unique cases, and you know, some in the media.
How many exceptional, unique cases do we need?
Absolutely, that it's all blown out of proportion. What worries me more, Gianno, and as someone who lost his brother to this senseless violence, how numb people are getting to all of this. Some who resign themselves, I'm not going to go into New York, or not as much into New York or Chicago because of this, and they're just living with it, dealing with it, sort of shrugging their shoulders and saying there's nothing I can do about it. What do you say when you hear that?
Well, I hear that from people generally who don't live in those areas, but I also hear that from people who live in those communities. They become desensitized. Some people have just accepted it as the reality that they have to capitulate to. And certainly for a lot of folks, they don't have the financial resources to just pick up and move. Yeah. Although there's been so many people who have moved. Forbes actually put out a report saying that Illinois was the #1 place that people were moving out of. So people who do have the resources are leaving, but others are stuck to be under the brunt of the policies that have created this havoc in these communities. And what more can you say? Yes, people can go and vote out these elected officials. They can do recall petitions, but the laws must change. And that is the real consideration here when we're thinking about soft on crime policies, which took the life of my baby brother, Christian. He will never go to college. He will never have kids. He will never have a wife. And who do we blame for this? The sentiment that it created this reality for so many people just like him. So many Christians are being created by the day. And it sickens me that this is the reality that we're in. But I have to stand up and use this platform for every bit of airtime that I can to push this message so we can change the reality that the people in Chicago and these other cities are living in. And that's what I'm dedicating my life to now, Neil. And I thank you so much for continuing to bring me on to talk about this issue, because it is impacting the lives of so many people, millions of people across the country, and they need a voice to speak out for them.
Well, they've got a powerful one now. Gianno, I know very well how much Christian loved you and looked up to you. And I have a feeling wherever he is now, he loves you all the more and is very impressed with everything you're doing. Thank you, brother.
Well, he's up in heaven, Neil, and I'm so thank you for that very kind comment.
Just so sad. Gianno Caldwell, thank you very much. Christian, by the way, was only 18 years old. A little more after this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.